Kia ora, ni hao, and hello. Welcome to the MidJourney podcast. I'm your host, Camelia Yang. My guest today is Chen Qiufan, also known as Stanley Chen. He's an award-winning Chinese science fiction writer. His fiction, described as a science fiction realism, focuses on the internal struggles of individuals during times of accelerated change. And recently, Chen Qiufan collaborated with Kai-fu Li to co-write and publish a novel called AI 2041. In today's episode, we talk about some technologies mentioned in the book, sci-fi writers in Web3, Chaoshan culture, and Chinese philosophy and metaphysics. I hope you enjoy the show. I'd like to start with the book you co-wrote with Kai-fu Li, AI 2041. Can you walk me through the journey of making this book? How did you come up with the idea to co-write together?
Thanks for having me here. And this book is a very unconventional collaboration. So because me and Dr. Kai-fu Li, we had overlapping time back in the day when we worked for Google. And I think it was 2019, before the pandemic. He reached out to me and talking about this idea, a collaboration. Is like a very unusual format, blending science fiction with nonfiction together, because he used to be a very successful bestseller author, AI superpower, but he thinks that maybe storytelling is more attractive to younger generation. So like science fiction and movies is super popular all around the world. So that's how he came up with this idea. And I think we spent almost half year to figure out what's the structure and what's the roadmap, like everything looks like, because nobody ever did something like this before. So we actually interview a lot of people from the industry, like from the university research institute, working on AI relative subjects, and try to understand what is going on really in the field. At the very beginning, I think it's really difficult because we are totally have a different background. So he studied computer science back in the day, and he's doing like all this kind of investment. So, but me, I'm more like an artist, like a writer, right? So I work by myself. So it's like we need to adapt it to each other. So it's like a lot of like back and forth discussion, debating about each stories, and of course we have to set up the tone. Like this book supposed to be very positive and telling the people about the real thing about AI and how to make the speculation of the future. And I think that's the right attitude we hold on to. So I think this is something we agreed on, and we started from there. So it took us a while to like figure out everything, and I think and it took us 2 years to finish the book and get it published.
What are some AI-related technologies you guys picked up in this book?
Like from computer vision to natural language processing, DeepFake, and AlphaFold, like protein structure, folding structure prediction. And of course, there's a lot of peripheral devices like drones and robots and autonomous vehicle. So I think everything we talk about is actually exist at the present, but we just push it a little bit forward, like how it will become in the next 20 years, and it will totally change our daily life.
Yeah, I think among all the technologies you guys mentioned, I think deepfake is the one worried me most. But in your story, it's a kind of a happy ending, I would say. So, what's your opinion on this kind of godlike technology? How can we tell in the future what is real and like everybody can use deepfake to make some untrue things become a reality? What's your opinion on this technology?
Right. So for now, you can still like figure out which is real, which is fake, with your bare eyes. But I think in the future, the technology will become very, very accessible to everyone. So it's more sophisticated and advanced that with human perception, you couldn't distinguish which is authentic and which is like artificial. So in that scenario, I think we need a new level of anti-deepfake technologies, just like what I described in the fiction. So the major platform, like news sites and video sites and everything, we need to build up this kind of filter and to detect all the signals on very subtle level and maybe from the algorithmic and coding level to distinguish the two. And I think people they need some time to adapt to the new reality because everything could be fake, video, picture, audio, like even I don't know, maybe there'll be some real figures. It could be a holographic projection, but it looks super real,
Mm.
and it could trigger a lot of you know like potential crimes and so this is something happening a lot in the movies, but I think right now you can see a lot of fraud, a lot of this kind of cases. Elder generation, they're easily to be cheated and fell into some kind of trap like this. And in the future, will all be like that. So it's a very scary scenario, and we need to be prepared from now on to design the mechanism and design how to protect all this rights, to protect our property and privacy and everything. So I think this is what I can see is definitely happening in the future.
Yeah, I don't know if you heard the interview between Joe Rogan and Steve Jobs. Yeah, they made it online. Oh, this is so real, and yeah, so kind of mind blowing.
Yeah,
Maybe in the future we can let the dead people reborn.
sure, sure.
Because for me, I quite like a lot of writers that were already died, like the Chinese one, Su Shi.
Uh-huh.
When they make the Joe Rogan and Steve Jobs interview, they got the raw material from their previous recording. But for the people like died 1,100 years ago, we didn't have any resources from them. Like
Yeah.
how, yeah, do you think that's possible to bring them back?
Yeah, I think nobody alive really know how Su Shi talks and behaves. So all we can have is from the books, and maybe we can just build up a new figure, and but like he can using all these poems from Su Shi and feels like him, but not really him. So because nobody really knows, but I think that the biggest challenge is those who we are very familiar with, such as Steve Jobs. And if you build up some virtual identity, just talk, behave pretty close to Steve Jobs, that could be a moral and ethical problem there because it might create a lot of confusions, and also what's the relationship with him and the still alive relatives and the offsprings. So that could be something very scary as well.
True. Yeah. I think we also need get some moral code when using all those technologies.
Yes.
What kind of technologies surprise you most and which one is your favorite?
GPT model.
Mm,
Yeah, and I'm using MidJourney. I think it's based on like some similar model. Like you can trigger the automatically generate some imageries by input the text prompts.
mm,
And I think it's surprisingly good, and it can capture all this very subtle, sophisticated emotion in the text and transform it into a visual format. It is so powerful that I show some of my uh, collaborated works with my publisher, and they thought that this is so high quality and good enough to be the cover art of a book or like a illustration in the book. So maybe in the near future, like a lot of like human artists, illustrators, maybe just they are not at the top of the pyramid, but the average level, they might lose their jobs because like AI is cheaper, is faster, and it's more diverse and flexible. So I think this is something really happening, and the question is, do we need to draw a line, and if there's any kind of copyright issue behind the scene, because like all this data is from internet, like from the historical portfolios, like from all these very famous artists and classic artwork back in the day. So
yeah.
do we need to pay someone because we're using all this data to train the model? So I think all of this is still in the gray zone and need to be figured out. Yeah.
Yeah. So I know a lot of writers and artists, they kind of afraid of AI. But in my opinion, I see when I create the article or imagery, I think if you have this artistic training, you can still do better than normal people. Like when you use a mid journey, if you know a lot of art history, you know which eras this picture is from and the artist's name you can add into the prompts so you can generate you have more information.
Yes.
Yeah, in the future the current writers and artists shouldn't be afraid of these tools but can leverage to help them create more fantastic arts.
Yes, I think that's the right attitude. So you have to proactively embrace the new technology and use it to elaborate and uplifting your own writing or drawing, creating creativity level. So and then we can come up with something greater, and it's like making the real impact because it can be appreciated by many people. So that's uplifting of the whole civilization.
Mhm.
So I think this is the way we should do, not just to like reject it easily, like say, oh no, I'm just I don't want to use any kind of this kind of new technology because we're already using all of those, like using your laptop, using Photoshop and everything, and camera for sure. So there's no way you can reject all this new things from happening, but you need to like you need to adjust and adapt it to it.
Yeah, it reminds me when I was at NearCon, where you were a speaker, and I met a illustrator, and he showed me his work. Like he's rejecting AI. He said, "Oh, we are doomed."
Yeah.
So he drew an illustration about how all artists against AI. I find this very interesting.
Yeah.
Speaking of NearCon, like how did you get into Web3? Like why a writer being invited to be a speaker at a Web3 conference?
Yeah, it's quite unusual, but Yeah, I met Neil Stevenson in Austin Consensus this year, and I think that maybe there'll be more and more like
Mm.
traditional writers and artists might have the interest to understand Web3 and the creator economy, because I think I totally believe that's the future. And to me, I think personally, I had this interest in crypto and Web3 for quite a few years, and I started to step into the industry. I think, yeah, in before pandemic, and I did some early investment on some projects, and also launched the NFT auction on TR Lab.
Oh, okay.
So that was 2020. Like we invited a crypto artists from all around the world,
Yeah.
and they created some NFT artwork based on the story in AI 2041. That's such an amazing, fascinating experience, because you can see how each artist, they have their different perception and understanding of the story, and transform it into another format. And it's super powerful because we got a chance to engage with a new group of readers. Like even not every one of them like they used to read science fiction, but with this new kind of artwork, we can have this kind of AMA and book club on Discord, and exchange idea, and everyone will write some review and comments after each story and artwork.
Hmm.
So I think this is something we definitely should think about, how to leverage the new medium as a way of storytelling. So because we text, I think it's not for everyone for sure. So a lot of people might not have the mentality and time to read through the whole book, but as an artwork is very intuitive, and is like you can consume it and you can appreciate it like just like at the very first sight. So it hits you or not. So uh, it's very direct. So I think this is something we must like keep in mind, that not only one way to tell the story, but one story can be adapted into many different formats, and then we can create an even bigger audience.
Mm. So true. Yeah, I know the bestseller author Mark Manson, who wrote the subtle art of not giving a fuck. So he made his quote into NFT, and he established his private club. So you need to purchase the NFT, you to access his private club,
Hmm.
and kind of build the new relationship between author and readers.
Yes.
So what was your practice to embrace this new technology? Or in Web3, you want to like build a new relationship with readers, or doing some new experiments for writing?
Yeah, so I'm working on MidJourney to create some graphic novel,
Mhm.
and that's the next project. And also, we try to do some experiment on this kind of interactive fiction. So that's basically like a text mod. So you can have very simple imagery. It's not a very heavy three triple A game, but it's like interactive. You can make your you can select some options, and you can order the characters to make the move, or to choose different kind of like action. So I think this is something blurring the line between fiction with game. So it's like a
Mm.
gamification of
Yeah.
fiction. So I think this is something I really have huge interest into, because I think this is I think game is the future, but the problem is game development is so expensive, and you need a team, and you need so
Hmm.
many expertise, and you need the technology, but maybe we can do it in a light way, like using Web3, using all this kind of existing platform. So that could be like everyone could create their own version of game in the future, and that could be very powerful because and you can sell, you can create all these kind of props and devices and characters in the game, and they are all kind of like NFT or digital assets. So I think this is something happening, and but it's not ready yet. So this is I think pretty much looking forward to.
Yeah, one of the story, My Hunting Idols, you wrote in the AI 2041, is a mixed reality, like
Yeah.
AR, VR, or XR. Yeah, I find it's very excited.
Mm-hmm.
Like maybe next time when we record
Mm-hmm.
podcast, we
Yes.
can just feel like we are in the same room with all our virtual avatar.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and this game, like the book, would definitely trigger a lot of interest. Because when I was browsing Bilibili,
Mm-hmm.
which is a like Chinese YouTube, so there's this kind a lot of writers, they start to bring the readers to participate into their creation.
Yes.
Like the readers can pick up which direction the character needs to go and change the ending.
Mm-hmm.
It's very exciting for writers like you.
Yes.
Yeah.
And like you, for sure.
Yeah, I'm also doing some experiments. Very excited time.
Mm-hmm.
And when it comes to Chinese sci-fi writers, Liu Cixin's name, I think that's the most well-known one.
Sure.
It's a three-body problem. Yeah, a lot of my Westerner friends, they read it and gave a very high
Mm-hmm.
complimentary.
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
noticed that Liu Cixin's work is much focused on the faraway universe or out of space,
Yes.
and you are more focused on the Earth.
Mm-hmm.
So, can you elaborate on your philosophy regarding creating your science fiction stories?
Even like three body problem, there are a lot of like references pointing towards the history and the present day issues. So I think science fiction as a genre, it feels to me like we just reflexively projecting the future, but it's actually help people to realize the invisible problems nowadays. So because and it can help you to shift a little bit of your perspective with changing the setting of the reality.
Mm,
For example, like you can change the sense of time and space. You can shift the perspective from human centric to maybe alien centric, or like there's so many other species,
mhm,
animals, plants, microbe, fungi, and it with this kind of perspective shift, you can see a new version of reality, and it changed everything since then. and and I think from that point of view, science fiction is the most powerful cognitive tool that it can reshape the reality by reshaping our consciousness. So I think, for example, The Handmaid's Tale, Marguerite Atwood, she wrote the book in 1980s, I think. So, but like even it's not like directly projecting the situation in our reality now, but it using all this kind of metaphorical storytelling. So actually, is telling the same thing. So I think this is something why science fiction as a genre can came across the test of time, and it can resonate with people from different culture, from different location, and living in different time, and they can always feel this is the story they relate to, and this is something I really want to try, because I think my thing is it's just like a different. It's not about good or bad. So I'm more focused on the near future,
Mm.
and I really love to explore like maybe a few steps away from now, and to examine what might gonna happen, like on the social structure, on the humanity, and on the relationships, and etc etc, and also it's like reversely has some impact on the development of technology as well. So it's like a feedback loop. So it's create this kind of cybernetic
Mm.
mechanism. So it's, of course, is here, but I think we need to escalate it to another level, that human consciousness is very sophisticated, and it's not something just an objective. It's not like a machine. So there's something more than we can fully understand. So this is something I think is a little bit across the line between science fiction and fantasy, and but I think this is why it gets everyone so excited, because we are pushing the boundaries a little bit further. It's just the spirit of science. We always have so many things unknown ahead of us, but what you can do is just push your comprehension, understanding of the world
Mm.
step by step a little bit further, and then we can understand more.
How do you think Chinese culture influenced your creation? Because I know when you wrote The Waste Tide, you combined some Chaoshan culture.
Yes.
Can you tell my listeners where is Chaoshan, and brief introduction about your hometown, where you're from?
Yeah, I was born and raised in a city, small city named Shantou. We said it's small because the population only 3 million people. So maybe
Yeah,
in Europe it's not small. Anyways,
yeah. But in China, yeah.
yeah,
Mm.
and this city with there are other 5 cities around that area is create this kind of concept called Chaoshan culture. So we speak the same dialect, we share the same traditions, and our people, it was called the Eastern Jew, because they adventurous, and they would take the risk to travel so far away overseas doing business, and they are very concentrating their community, and to heritage their culture, language, and food. So you can see Chaoshan people all around the world, in America, in Europe, in Africa, Southeast Asia, and like most Thailand Chinese, they're from Chaoshan. So like 85% of the
Mm.
Thai Chinese.
Ah, okay.
So I think this is something I didn't realize until I turned into like in my 30s.
Mm.
And because before that, I think my culture is kind of very old school, and maybe sometimes is too conservative. To me, it's not open enough. So I try to like cut off from this kind of labels. But afterward, I realized, oh no, this is something
Yeah.
existing in my blood, in my lineage. So you couldn't turn away from it, but you have to accept it, and see what's the vitality in there. And I realized this is something very in inclusive, and very adaptive, and it's very lively in our culture, because otherwise you couldn't fit into the different society or all around the world. You can make a living, you can
Mm-hmm.
create your own community, you can spreading all this culture. So I think this is something so profound, uh, influenced my writing,
Mm.
such as in Waste Time, we're talking about
Yeah.
electronic waste, and it's based on a real location, a small town, very close to my hometown. It's like 60 kilometers away. The name in Chinese is Guiyu. It means precious island, but the pronunciation in Chinese actually is the same with Silicon
Mm.
Island. So that's what I use in the novel. So basically, I criticize a lot of like the culture, the people, the value system, but also there are many potentials there, because if you mobilize the people with a new kind of value and the new kind of technology, so maybe they will have this kind of power to reshape the polluted environment, and to uplifting the whole industry to a more sustainable model. So that's something I really love to discuss, and I think is universally exists all around the world because of this electronic waste system. So I think this is something coincidentally happened in my writing career, but it led led me towards this direction to care more about this climate change, environmental issues, and how to like build up this deeper connection with the local culture and traditions.
Yeah. Can you share some stories about Chaoshan culture that outsider never know? Even for me as a Chinese, I'm probably not familiar with.
Yeah, I mean, like there are so many traditions and rituals,
Mm.
and as a Chaoshan uh, kid, uh, when you turn into 18, so it means you're becoming an adult. So we have this kind of old saying is like step out of the garden.
Okay.
So 出花园.
Mm-hmm.
So we will have very serious big ritual to do, like you have to put on a lot of like very fancy, even in red color clothes, and you have to eat certain kind of food. For example, I think this is some sweetened eggs, so it's egg but it's sweetened with sugar or something. And I think there's some ritual, maybe some family, you need to do something with your elder generation, like your parents or grandparents, and they will give you the blessing. Like now you are a adult, you have to be responsible
Yeah.
for your life and for the people in your life.
Mm-hmm.
So I think this is something I I didn't see it in other places in China.
No.
I realized that maybe yeah, the people here we share different kind of perspective of life, and because we have so many rituals in our daily life. For example, every month we will worship the god of the land, and every
Ah,
month we will worship the goddess of the moon. So
mm.
I really didn't see it in like other cities, other areas in China, but in Chaoshan area, this is our daily life. So since kid, I experienced everything, but I didn't feel it's so different until I went to the university. That's where I met everyone from different part of China, and I realized, oh, China
Mm.
is so huge. It has 1.4 billion population, and everyone is so different culturally. and, and
Yeah.
And I think that's um how I start to have this kind of openness and inclusiveness, because you have to pay respect to other, not like you have this kind of bias or discrimination just because you are different. So we have to respect to all the differences. So that's what I learned.
Yeah, there's so many stereotypes in China. For me, when you mention, oh, you're from Shantou, I will say, oh, you are best for the beef hot pot. Yeah, if you heard me from Shandong, you probably think, oh, people from there can drink a lot.
Right, right, right.
Yeah, that's very interesting. When I was traveling around the southern part of China, I see people like to worship God.
Yeah,
Yeah, the God
yeah.
you mentioned.
Hmm.
And what do you consider that as a religion? Because so many people say Chinese people don't have a religion, and
Hmm.
or they worship thousands of different gods.
I would say, yeah, it's religious practice, but I'm not sure if like it's a very systematic religion, because we don't have
Mm,
church, we don't have that kind of dogma, but maybe very simple philosophy of living. So yeah, we worship the god and
mm,
goddess, but um I'm not really sure if this is some kind of religion, but I think we are people with spirituality,
yeah,
and we have our respect and appreciation of the universe. So that's very Taoism. I think it's the mixture of Taoism and Buddhism.
yeah. When you create science fiction stories, did you find there's a conflict between the religion and science? What's your thoughts on the relationship between religion and science?
In the traditional perspective of science fiction, is all about science and technology, right? But it feels
Mm-hmm.
to me like like mythology, and
Mm-hmm.
also religion is also a way of interpreting the world on certain level. So I think because our understanding of the world, of the physical world, or the in, internal world is evolving all the time, like with our
Mm-hmm.
development of technology and experiment and everything. So I think is I think they're both legit, just
Yeah.
because of the context, and I almost feel that they're sharing this as equal as the power of like connecting people, and to create this kind of consensus uh, with with this like belief system, because science also is a belief system. So you based on your belief, you make the assumption and you make the speculation, you try to get some proof. You can use the data from telescope and everything. I just visit CERN in Geneva, so I think basically they're doing the same thing with super sophisticated machine to find the smallest particle like we ever known, and to examine all of their features, what's the relationship with gravity and everything, and even they create antimatter in the lab. So this is something, it feels very very religious, because we all try to understand who we are, where we come from, and where we are going to. So this is, I think, it's something deep inside, that we human being, we have this kind of like eager to pursue the reason
Yeah.
and purpose of existence. So I think to me it's not conflicts, but it's like different angles of the same thing. So I'll put all of these elements in my
Yeah.
stories, and they can interact with each other, and people can feel, oh, I didn't see like religious or superstitious from that angle before, but now you make me to rethink about it, and maybe something is real there, but we just didn't recognize it as science and technology yet.
Yeah.
So I think this is what I try to do, because in my during my childhood, it's always as mixed as this. So I experience everything, and I also, like, we have the latest video game, and all this kind of electronic devices, but at the same time we have this kind of shamanic rituals, and we have superstitions, we have ghosts, we have gods in our daily life. So it's like it feels like just part of my life, is
Mm.
my experience. So it's very unique, maybe.
Yeah. When I grew up, yeah, I experienced a lot of rituals, especially during the Chinese New Year time. So there's like shamanic
Yeah,
dancing
yeah,
and
yeah,
what you need to do on the first day of Chinese New
yeah.
Year or second day. You need to follow all these rituals.
Mm-hmm.
But before I was thinking, oh my God, this so old traditions doesn't make any sense. But the older I
Mm-hmm.
grow up, I feel like, wow, that's actually it's a kind of a connection between human and the universe. The dancing they're doing and
Mm-hmm.
the rituals they like worship the different kind of gods is quite interesting. I know in Chaoshan you must have different rituals during Chinese New Year. Can you give me some examples?
I think, yeah, because my family is living in the city, so not many rituals happening in recent years. But I sometimes I'll go to the village, the countryside, because many rituals happen there. Like, for example, Chu Wu is like the fifth day of the Lunar New Year.
Mm.
So they will have this kind of ritual, like the whole village, the people will come out, and the young men, like, they'll carry a huge statue of the local god, and they're running across the village to every family, and they will have the 鞭炮. I
Hmm.
don't know 鞭炮 how to say.
There are
The
fireworks, yeah.
firework, and they will knock the drums, and they will have very loud music, and everyone is so crowded, and they want to touch the
Yeah.
statue of the god and get some good luck, like a blessing of the new year. So it's almost feels to me like a carnival.
Hmm. Yeah,
So
true.
it's like a huge festival. So I really enjoy that, because you feel this is very authentic, and everyone is so happy, and everyone is so hopeful for the new year. So, and you can feel this kind of connection between the people and with the supernatural beings.
Yeah.
So yeah, so this is something happening until now, like every year. So still,
Yeah, same thing. We call it a 破五, which is like
uh-huh,
break
yeah, yeah,
the yeah, the fifth day of New Year,
yeah. Yeah.
and we put the ancestors, the name list of
Hmm.
our ancestors, then worship them. It's
Yeah.
quite interesting to connect your roots. Yeah, before I also have the thing you just mentioned, like I don't want to tie my identity to my roots.
Hmm.
I feel like they're all like old fashioned or I want to see the new world. But now I feel it's embedded already in my DNA. I need to
Hmm.
connect
For
all
sure.
the cultures, especially Chinese culture. like thousands years of history, and there's so many
Hmm.
ancient books and that can inspire our
Hmm.
creation. Yeah. So, what are some ancient Chinese books or school of thoughts you'd like to include in your work?
I think two books I've revisited a lot in recent years. One is Dao De Jing,
Yeah.
and one is I Ching,
Mm-hmm.
the Book of Change.
Yeah.
So I think this two book is even more timely and important for now, and because it's Dao De Jing is actually basically talking about how to think and act beyond binary. So I think right now a lot of like issues, geopolitics, climate, and everything is all
Mm-hmm.
because we were trapped in this framework of going binary. So I think like thousands of years ago, our ancestor Lao Tzu, he realized that this could be a huge problem for our civilization, and he used this very philosophical, abstract, sometimes ambiguous expression to help us to think beyond that. But of course, it's very difficult for everyone to understand it. So you need, I think, you need some daily practice as well. So I do meditation. I did some retreats myself, and I Ching is it's almost like
Like a fortune teller.
yeah. It's like you can use it to predict a lot of things in
Yeah.
your life and maybe maybe the future. So it feels like very science fictional to me,
Mm-hmm.
and then there's something there as also about like you embedded your subjectivity into the objective world,
Mm.
and you create this kind of predicted uh, system is like a quantum computation process.
Yeah,
Then you
I
can
see.
get
Mm-hmm.
some very accurate results. So that's totally fascinating. And each time I just read the book, and it always gives me so much wisdom and so much insight into the reality. So I think, yeah, maybe in the future we will prove that this is science, and this is new kind of science we are not fully understand yet.
Yeah, I find this very fascinating. I changed my name when I was in secondary school
Uh huh.
because my grandpa he studied I Ching
Mm-hmm.
and he used this
Mm-hmm.
science to change my name to Yixuan. And then my fate is changed. I don't know if it's because of adolescent hormones change
Yeah.
or whatever, but I feel like, yeah, I become the different person and my family's fate also changed. It's
Mm-hmm.
getting better and better. I don't know what's the secret or power behind this. I just feel like, yeah, from then on, I feel like, wow, I Ching is very powerful and I want to learn more.
Yeah. Totally.
When we first met each other in real life, you mentioned your name also is from I Ching, right?
Yeah, it was like advised by some fortune telling people.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
like my people is very superstitious.
That's the thing we can't explain, but I'm just okay. It's doing good to me, so I'll believe it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
We also mentioned the psychedelic when we first met each other. What's your
Yeah, yeah.
opinion on that? Because you know, in the traditional Chinese culture, yeah, people probably treat psychedelic as a drug or something illegal, but I found it's very popular in Western countries, and I did a couple of retreats, and I found wow, it definitely helped me
Hmm.
with the creative works. So, what's your experience with psychedelic?
Yeah, I think because China we have history of opium war. So I think this kind of burden is still there. So like we intended to demonize all kind of substances, like with this kind of like whatever is like hard drug or like psychedelics, psychoactive substances. But I think back in the um, if you look back to the longer history in China, so
Mm,
even like 4,000 years ago, our
yeah.
ancestor already used some kind of this substances, like herbal substances for sure, to help them to get into the altered state of consciousness, and which was a
Mm,
shamanic experience. And all of those shamans actually giving the direction, the prediction to the emperor, to the society. They predict the result of the war, like the weather, like the agriculture,
mm,
and everything. So I think basically they function just like what the technology plays nowadays. So it's very interesting that it seems like we are reconnect back to that part of the traditions, like in Peru, like people using Amazonia, ayahuasca, of course, with the help of shaman to get into this kind of state of trance. And of course there's many other kind of psychedelics in Mexico and in Southeast Asia, in Africa.
mm,
So I think it's universally exist. And now I can see a lot of like scientific research in the institute, in the university, to learn how to use
yeah.
psychedelics to help the patients with depression, anxiety, and cancer, maybe to deal with their mental issues. So I think it's all like depends on how we use it and what's the purpose of using all this kind of psychedelic substances. So I definitely believe that there there is a lot of huge potential there to help us to realize um, we are not just living on flesh and blood. We're not just a physical body. We're not reductionism products, but there's something like, on consciousness level is so deeply embedded with the world, with the cosmos, with and entangled with other species as well. And psychedelics definitely will help us to realize uh, that part of the reality. I think that's the most important thing that help us to build up this empathy towards other species, and that's maybe the way we uh, to solve a lot of problems.
Mm, yeah. When I reread Shanhai Jing, the classic of
Hmm.
mountains and seas, I feel like they must have some psychedelic trip, then they can create all those monsters or beasts. They must say something different.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Who are the biggest influencers on your life, like writers or technology leaders or anyone?
Um, it's very difficult to say, but I'm I make my English name Stanley after Stanley Kubrick.
Ah, yeah.
So I think because he made so many great sci-fi movies, not only sci-fi movies, but across all different genres, and he's so visionary and so profoundly reflecting our humanity and civilization. So I think he's the one I'll always look up upon to, and getting so so much inspiration from, and I went to like the exhibition in London.
Yeah, I went
This,
to as well.
yeah,
Yeah.
the design museum is so
Hmm.
fascinating, and I learned a lot,
Yeah,
like
I
from him.
cried there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Even
Yeah.
like he's a control freak and he's afraid of taking all the flights, and but
Yeah.
still he's a genius, for sure.
Mm. Yeah, I feel like he was like a guy traveled from the future. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
he's so ahead of his time.
Totally,
And yeah,
totally.
which one of his works inspired you the most? I know it's hard to answer, maybe a lot.
Yeah, I think it's 2001 Space Odyssey, because I rewatch it so many times. Like even every year, I'll watch it again. So because every time I see something I didn't see before. So this is like a classic, all-time classic.
Yeah, for sure. I told my friend if one day I can create one of like that kind of movie or book, I can die immediately. I have no regret. Do you also have these feelings like what kind of legacy you want to leave to this world?
Uh-huh. I didn't really think about it, because I think it's not decided by me,
Mm,
but by the
true.
time, by the world. So all I can do is just continuously create something I believe in,
Mm,
and I hope maybe just a small piece of all of those works can be remembered, can be like heritage, or be appreciated by our offsprings, if there is still some offsprings in the future. Yeah, hopefully there's no like nuclear war.
mm,
And yeah, I hope I can help people to think a little bit of what's the relationship of human beings with other species and with the cosmos, and to
mm,
realize what kind of life and purpose they want to pursue. And this is something I really want to do.
mm. I noticed that your works are very concerned about the climate change and environment. I don't know if you read the recent news. There's two environmentalists. They went to a national gallery in London. They put
Uh-huh.
yeah
Oh,
the
yeah, yeah,
soup.
yeah. Van
Yeah,
Gogh.
Van Gogh. Yeah.
Yeah, the
So
sunflowers, right?
yeah. So what's your thoughts on that? Like extreme behaviors to raise people's awareness of environment.
Yeah, I think this kind of extreme or radical activist is actually the previous generation of environmentalism. So I don't think it really changed anything, but maybe just another way, like it creates some,
Mhm.
misunderstanding of the problem, and the focus, like blur the focus, because Van Gogh is not the one who create the carbon emission, but all of those oil, companies. So I think, yeah, sometimes maybe it's just seeking for attention, but I think it's not a very mature way
Mm,
to doing so. So I think we need some more thoughtful action, and maybe with the Web3, with DAO, with the new technology, we can build up some constructive solution. So I think that's the right way to doing all this kind of like environmental activist. So yeah, so I am putting my thoughts in my next novel. So I actually writing something, uh, an organization called Gaia DAO.
ah, cool.
So
Mm,
yeah, so it's like a new kind of like environmentalism, and their action is basically happening in virtual reality, and maybe with in the way of crypto economy. So this is more encouraging and incentive people to do the good things to our Mother Earth. So this is something I would expect to happen in the future.
That's good. And last question. What's the meaning of life? I just copied this question from Lex Freeman. I know. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think meaning of life or the purpose of life was given by the external world, but it was given by ourselves. It was defined by ourselves. So from that perspective, I think to me, like personally, I think the meaning of life is to create and to play this infinite game. So you have to believe it's not a zero-sum game. So there's actually no competitors, there's no competition. You have to win, but there's no win or lose. But all you have to do is to uplifting yourself and to create as much as possible the the value to the rest of the world, to the society. To me, is like writing stories and delivering a message which I believe is correct, and I think that's the meaning of my life for now. So I'm not sure if anything else would come up to me in the future, maybe have kids, maybe
Yeah.
going to Mars, but it's just some side products. It feels to me like the core of it is create.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah. I think for now, for my meaning is, yeah, create and just explore my inner
Yeah.
self and just spread my thoughts and the feelings to the outside world to connect with others. It's very powerful. So thank
Yes.
you so much, Stanley.
Thank
So
you.
if people want to know more about your works, where can they find you?
They can find my works on Amazon, and they can
Yeah.
follow me on Twitter. So it's by my handle is my name Chen Qiufan, and I have a website, but it's a very sketchy one. It's chenqiufan.cn. So I use Discord a lot. So yeah.
Yeah. I'll put them in the show notes so people can
Sure.
continue
Thank you.
following you. Cool.
Thank
you so
you.
much.
Enjoy Italy.
Thank you. Kia ora, ni hao, and hello. Welcome to the Chewy Journal podcast. I'm your host, Camelia Yang. My guest today is Chen Qiufan, also known as Stanley Chen. He's an award-winning Chinese science fiction writer. His fiction, described it as a science fiction realism, focuses on the internal struggles of individuals during times of